Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. I'm your host, Jonathan Cilia, joined by my co-host, Julian Bonici, and here are your headlines for today. Sandro Ketkuti revealed to be owner of Fomerih land. COVID-19 lockdowns keep newlyweds apart. Gap between Labour Party and PN stands at 40,000 votes. How Maltese venues are bypassing COVID-19 measures. And Maltese electronics store finds itself at center of online storm. Today we've got a very special interview with Yasmin Ellul, KSU Student Affairs Officer, right after today's headlines. But before we get to that, Julian, you want to take us away with the first story?
Yeah, sure. So Sandro Ketkuti, the head of Malta's Controversial Developers Association, has been outed as the owner of land in Fomerih Bay and the man who sort of erected a gate blocking public access to the area. Obviously, very controversial decision to do so, but Ketkuti confirmed through his lawyer that this was done so for safety concerns. This was the same thing that sort of the planning ministry said. Obviously, this comes after quite a shocking, clay slope in the area, making, so maybe some concerns about the safety of the area. Obviously, activists didn't agree, and so far the planning ministry has confirmed that it's in negotiations with Ketkuti to sort of get an agreement on the issue. Obviously, it's created a lot of controversy about the privatization of land because ultimately, in Maltese law, it says, you have to have access to the foreshore even if there is private land. I wonder what you think about it, John.
When we first heard about this gate being erected in Fomerih, a beautiful bay, a beautiful area, there was the collapse last year, so we were wondering, was it set up for safety reasons, or was it really because someone had private land? And it turns out it is because someone had private land, and it was the head of the MDA. A lot of people were outraged. I was shocked as well, and it wasn't only me and the public. Activist group Movement Graffiti have also issued a statement threatening direct action if access to Fomerih is restricted once again. They said they didn't really care that the government was negotiating with Sandro Ketkuti. They said clearly, quote, "One fundamental principle exists: no one can restrict access to the coast. And if access is restricted again, they will be hosting a direct action." So let's be very clear, Movement Graffiti have hosted multiple actions within Castile, in the ports, in multiple towns and cities around Malta, so they definitely will do it. So we'll definitely have to see if there's any developments on this gate story in the coming days and weeks. Moving on to the next story, a bit of a shocking one. A newlywed couple who just got married last year haven't been able to see each other because they've been separated by the seas and COVID-19. So an Indian couple, Anshul Shug and Sakshi Shug, they met on an online dating app in 2019, were married in 2020, and they were planning to move to Malta by 2021. However, Anshul has been in Malta for about 10 months now, separated from his wife because just as she was about to come to Malta, COVID-19 hit and India closed its borders. So it's a really unfortunate situation. They literally just got married and have been separated ever since. Anshul spoke to us and he said that he hopes to see his wife for their very first anniversary. He said that he's, quote, crying every night. He really misses her. He doesn't know what he should do. And since then, he's even lost his job. So he's in Malta without his wife, not in the best situation. The government is aware of this situation and they're looking into it, but it's just shocking to show you just how quickly your life can be thrown into disarray because the pandemic hits.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it sort of puts a bit of perspective, while we've all gone through quite a little bit, during the COVID-19 pandemic, there are some people going through quite a lot. Like, can you imagine, you're newlywed, the one person you really want to spend a lot of time with and you're suddenly separated, because of a pandemic, this man, was already working in Malta as an accountant, and while people might say, just go back, it's easier said than done, right? Given financial implications and everything. What I also do think maybe this story sheds a light on, right, is maybe Malta's capabilities in dealing with large-scale visa, issues, from foreign countries and stuff. We're in a country now that's quickly developing into a multicultural society. We're having an influx of foreign workers. Now we need to sort of ensure that our processes for these people are given the resources they really deserve. Onto our next story, onto a bit more of a political note, the gap between the Labour Party and the Nationalist Party now stands at 40,000 votes, according to a survey from Vincent Marmara. Marmara himself is a well-known statistician who has correctly predicted election results before. Currently, he has the Labour Party at 55% of the vote, the PN at 42% of the vote, and third-party merger PD at 2.5%. What's very interesting to note is that Labour has actually increased its gap from the 2017 general election, almost despite all the scandals that have happened, and it seems that Robert Abela is playing his part, right? In the same survey, Robert Abela has a trust rating of 52.7% compared to Greg's 33.2%. Unfortunately, it's not all doom and gloom, right, for Bernard Greg. He's just become PN leader and is already making, significant strides in that field. Maybe it's sort of realigning his expectations, because in the last few weeks and months, more to the day, have been releasing surveys sort of showing him making significant gains. But what people didn't really notice is that, almost 35% of those respondents had said that they didn't know. So this is a bit more of a fair reflection of what's happening in Malta at the moment.
No, there has been some progress for Greg. Let's be clear. He has been making a massive outreach to the youth. He's on TikTok now. We've been seeing more of that. And apart from that, he did just announce his new shadow cabinet in the last few weeks. So there has been some progress, but I'm not sure how much has changed. The shadow cabinet itself wasn't a major departure from his predecessor's cabinet, so we'll definitely have to see over the next coming weeks and months ahead of the next general election whether this really has some major effect on voters. Moving on to the next story, so obviously among the pandemic, one of the biggest hit sectors is the entertainment industry, and that includes restaurants, bars, clubs, etc. And we've been hearing that things have been happening in Portugal. There had been some incidents. There was the incident on New Year's Day. There had been the Hermanos attack as well. So we went out, to some bars and restaurants, as well as to speak to some people about how restaurants were bypassing COVID-19 measures. And it was quite interesting. So some places are serving alcoholic drinks in cappuccino cups. So you can get a nice Long Island iced tea in a teacup. And talking about teacups, someone else actually was served a gin and tonic in an actual teacup and saucer. So it's a very classy way to drink your alcohol. It's not only that, some places are just automatically putting food platters on diners' tables so that they can have a drink, whether they eat the platter or not. One person who spoke to Lovin Malta said that they weren't even aware that the platter was, going to be charged. It was placed on the table, they didn't touch it, and when they were leaving, it was added to the bill. So it's kind of a bill to drink in nowadays, a COVID-19 bill. So it does seem that, restaurants are finding ways, especially in the quieter areas. What we found in Portugal was that it was actually really, really strict. We tried to enter 2 venues in Portugal for drinks, and they told us we needed appointments and we needed to buy a main meal if we wanted to get 1 beer. So that's the situation in Portugal, at least in the earlier hours. But when you go to the quieter areas, these places are even more hard hit because they even have less customers. They've had to resort to serving cocktails in cappuccino cups. I don't know what you make of this, Julian.
Yeah, no, I think it raises 2 points. On one hand, there's enforcement, right? Our police, our people from the MTA, doing enough to making sure that every establishment is following these COVID regulations. The second one is also to kind of question the regulations themselves, right? Because it's obviously creating a clear disparity between restaurants who are allowed to function and are still acting as de facto bars, whereas bars have been made to close down. I know there's been a package in place, but these bars are really struggling to make ends meet after an awful 2020 and what's probably set to be an awful 2021. I just wonder why the government is doing certain things, even of the 11 p.m. curfew, even of the closure of bars, even face masks for that matter. It sort of seems like a visual thing that governments are to make people know this is why we're doing something when they're actually not taking much action at all. Let us know what you think about the whole situation. Should bars remain closed or should they open? Let us know in the comments below. On COVID-19 itself, just a small update on the numbers. Yesterday, 2 deaths, 182 new patients and 185 recoveries were announced. That puts the active cases at 2,676. And on a positive note, 3,456 people have received the second second dose of the vaccine. So, the future is also bright at the same time. On to our last story. A Maltese electronics store has found itself at the center of an online store after calling out people who criticized it for selling PS5s at an extraordinarily high markup of 1,000 euros. So the story all starts from a certain man named Andrew who posted a comment, raising concerns that this shop, cash buyers, was acting, was scalping, of these, well-wanted products. In response, cash buyers called him fat and overweight, quite shocking. Eliciting quite a strong response online. Somehow it found its way to meme pages who reacted by flooding cash buyers' page with awful reviews. In response, cash buyers did apologize, right? Sort of saying, we shouldn't speak like that, and putting the blame on an employee who was terminated. However, that seems like might not be the case because any criticism beneath that post was followed by even angrier replies from cash buyers calling people stupid, uneducated, even sort of saying they were jealous that the price was so high because they couldn't afford it. Really weird stuff. But if there's one lesson also to be learned from this is don't anger Malta's online community. When they band together, scary stuff can happen, right?
No, it was a masterclass in how not to deal with clients. So, if you have clients complaining, there's a myriad of options you can choose. Calling them fat should not be at the top of your list. And this comes as the world has been watching what happened with GameStop globally. We've seen what the internet can do in the face of corporations or companies who are not being the nicest. This is a really interesting story. So this is both globally as well as locally. And it just goes to prove as well that the hype for the PlayStation 5 is still real. It is still going on. So let's see if, cash buyers make the sales after all. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Obviously, we have a very important interview with Yasmin Ellul coming up next. But right now, we're going to cut to a quick video of an exploration of the Lua Naval Reservoir. So here we are with Yasmin Ellul, KSU Student Affairs Officer. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So we wanted to speak to you, obviously, after you've launched a new campaign, your Future EU campaign. So for those who might not know what it is, what is this campaign?
So basically, as you've said, KSU is currently undergoing a campaign called Your Future EU, and the main aim of the campaign is basically to engage civil society, particularly students and young adults, to participate and to voice their opinions as to the future European Union that they want to live in. Basically, what we've done is we've split up this campaign into 3 mini sub-campaigns. They're smaller campaigns, obviously, and we'll be focusing on 3 topics which we think are very pertinent and important to students and young adults nowadays. These being drug use, gender equality, and mental health. And what we want to do, apart from raise awareness on these topics, is we want to truly empower and connect young students and young adults to really become active citizens in society, especially on both a national and European level.
Now, it sounds like a brilliant initiative. So why did you choose those 3 pillars to start with?
So the choice was not a haphazard one. We've done a lot of research. So the campaign is being funded by the European Union, particularly the European Parliament. So a lot of research went into it. We've had to fill out an application to get the funding. So what we've done is we've identified 3 topics which we think are very important for students nowadays and which we think that present challenges for students nowadays, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic as well. And we've looked at statistics. So there are various statistics. For example, if you take a look at drug use, we can see that around 94 million people in the EU have at least used drugs at least once in their lifetime. If you take a look at gender equality, for example, in 2018, for the economy as a whole, the gross hourly earnings of women were at least 14.1% less than those of men.
Wow.
And then when you take, for example, mental health into consideration, at least 84 people in the EU suffer from mental health issues. So there are eye-opening statistics about this. We've done our research. We think that it's very important. We want students to voice their opinions, tell us what they think, and then eventually want to sort of use these as the basis of our policy suggestions and recommendations and present them on both a national and European level.
So I saw recently some of the videos that you've released as part of this campaign.
Yes.
In one of them, you spoke to Relief President,
Yes.
the Relief President. So how important is it for you guys to enter this kind of with an open mind?
It's very important for us. So, so part of our discussions where we don't want this traditional outlook on, for example, this particular video was on drug use. We don't want to really take this traditional outlook of, you know, don't do drugs, that's it. Usually when someone tells you not to do something, you're more inclined to do it anyways, to try it out. So what we want to do is, we believe that students and young adults are intelligent enough that when presented with the information, obviously information and knowledge is key. When presented with information, they're able to make informed decisions, and they're able to know at the end of the day what the effects are and what the consequences are. So
Fully agreed with that. And when it comes to mental health, obviously, just a few weeks ago, there was a big story about Mount Carmel as well. What are your concerns when it comes to mental health right now in Malta?
So our main concern is basically that, first of all, mental health is not given enough importance in all aspects. So we rarely speak about mental health in terms of students, for example. So what we want to do is, we've seen, for example, with the COVID-19 pandemic, there are increased risks of mental health issues among students, for example, due to unemployment and financial insecurity. So what we want to do is, we want to raise awareness, build up the knowledge on different mental health issues, for example, and then we want to sort of put forward our recommendations, possibly for an EU mental health strategy.
And when it comes to gender equality, one of the biggest issues in Malta over the last few months is gender quotas.
Yes.
It's a big discussion. What's KSU's position on gender quotas?
So we haven't really taken a position as KSU yet, but we will be discussing gender quotas as part of our campaign as well. What we want to do is we want to consult with other students as well and see what they think about that. Myself, I think that while it's a good way to sort of engage more women and to encourage more women to join politics, I think that there are other methods which would not really, I think it sort of defeats the women empowerment message. Sort of, I don't think that if I were to go into politics, I would need a quota to get elected. So, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Obviously, this doesn't reflect the opinion of KSU. It's just my personal opinion. But
and you mentioned the wage gap. So is the gender wage gap an issue in Malta in 2021?
There aren't really any research about this, and there's not really much studies that we can base this on. However, when you think about it, it's the studies that were done on a European level were on the EU as a whole. So I believe that it's a problem in Malta as well, and it's also something that we want to discuss.
So this campaign is going to be running till June 2021, and then you're going to present some proposals to the EU?
Yes,
That's the final plan?
our final plan is to come up with this policy paper, and which will be drafted by students as well. Obviously, we're going to do a lot of research. We're going to consult with professionals in the field as well. But it's going to be ultimately drafted by students, and it will contain all the outcomes of our previous events, the feedback from our events, discussions, debates. We're doing a survey at the moment as well on drug use, feedback from our videos, and then we'll sort of combine everything into that mixed with research, and we'll come up with our own proposals. Yes.
No, it sounds really, really interesting. So anyone who wants to take part in the surveys or in any of these discussions, where can they go? Where can they find more information about this?
So all the information about the campaign is on the KSU Facebook website. We're also posting on our Instagram page. So anyone who's interested in the campaign can find information there. I encourage all students and all young people watching this, and even the ones not watching this, to join our campaign, to participate, to let us know their opinions, and to be as active as possible.
Thank you so much, Yasmin, for joining us this morning. And from everyone at the Lovin Malta team, have a day full of lovin'.